The book Forgiving as We've Been Forgiven is written by L. Gregory Jones and Celestin Musekera and was published in 2010. This book follows the Rwandan genocide, a horrible event that occurred in the 90s. In this book, Celestin discusses how he lost his father and other family members in the genocide and how he goes about forgiving those that killed them, because that is what God told him to do. This book was written by two individuals affected by tragedies that ultimately forgave their wrongdoers. Celestin Musekera lived in a Rwandan village. The people in his village were not Christian, but believed that their ancestors lived among them and controlled their lives. Celestin was 15 when he heard about Christianity and accepted God 2 years later. His father, among other members of his family and congregation, were murdered in the Rwandan genocide. Celestin was at school during this time to become a preacher. After his graduation, he was sent to Rwanda to teach people of God and forgiveness. One day, God spoke to him and told him if he truly wants to teach people to learn to forgive, then he must forgive those who murdered his family. This Celestin did. During Celestin's time in various tribes of Rwanda, he was beaten, tortured, and starved. Eventually, he began to obtain his doctoral degree. He chose to study L. Gregory Jones. This started their new friendship and eventually this book. L. Gregory Jones's story, though not as horrific on a wide scale, is still extremely significant. His wife was a United Methodist preacher who was preaching one night, and the members of the church started arguing with each other. They were so infuriated with each other that they began to throw chairs at one another. Jones thought this encounter was very unique. He realized that conflicts like these were very common. The members of the church eventually chose sides and left the church. Jones realized through this that even if they left the church, they could not hide from themselves and their own problems. Jones has made it his life's work to inform and educate others on running from their problems and forgiveness. Celestin and Jones worked together on this book, taking turns on writing chapters. Celestin says that the pathway to forgiveness was to put on Christ, as if you were putting on clothes. He says that the three wounds that need to be healed in everyone's lives are wounds of the heart, wounds of the mind, and patterns of unjust actions against ourselves and others. Jones says that forgiving is like learning how to dance. Like learning the different steps to a dance, you have to learn the different steps to forgive. These are: step 1, truth-telling; step 2, acknowledging anger; step 3, concern for the other; step 4, recognizing, remembering, and repenting; step 5, commitment to change; and step 6, hope for the future. Each author also recounts individual stories of people they have come in contact with and led them to forgiving. One of these people that Celestin encounters was a woman named Clementine. On Clementine's wedding, the gift for the mother of the bride was presented. Surprisingly, Clementine's sister stood and received the gift. It was then that Clementine learned that the person who she thought was her sister, her best friend, and the person that she told all of her most personal secrets was actually her mother, and the person she thought was her mother was actually her grandmother. Clementine was born out of wedlock, something that was extremely unacceptable in her society. And to keep the family from being shunned, Clementine and the rest of the community was led to believe otherwise. Clementine fled from her family and would not see them for years. She had so much hatred in her heart that it was poisoning her relationship with her husband and children. Clementine learned of Celestin's organization, Alarm, and eventually learned how to forgive. An account from Jones's experience was from a woman that was in a class he taught at a university. This woman had been raped. One day, she came to his office and asked how she was supposed to forgive and pray for the person that raped her. Jones asked if he could pray for her rapist, and she said yes. Later, she returned and said that when she prayed for him, all she could say was his name. Jones told her that forgiveness takes time, and as long as she is trying, she is doing her best. Celestin concludes the book by saying how thankful and appreciative he is to be able to teach people of forgiveness as his life's work. This book is easy to read and not boring at all. It provides lots of examples of people facing different obstacles and continuing to forgive, many of which are relatable. I agree with the views of the authors that you have to forgive others no matter how difficult it may be, and in the end, you're setting yourself free. In the book, the authors talked about guilt and humility and used an example of Peter next to the fire. I understand what this reference meant because I learned that this was when Peter betrayed Jesus from my New Testament class. When I hear the word forgiveness, I think of forgive and forget, or forgiveness of sin. It is an individual endeavor because you have to choose to forgive someone on your own accord. It is a communal because others might forgive people in front of you, and it can encourage you to forgive others yourself. You face challenging people every day, and you must continue to forgive them daily. Forgiveness redeems us from being tied to that specific person or group that was causing us so much anger. Forgiveness redeems us to love and help others. I have experienced wrongdoing whenever someone has betrayed my trust and friendship. I could begin to offer forgiveness by not holding a grudge against them anymore. The hardest step makes up the dance of forgiveness for me would be step 5, commitment to change. I could practice slowly changing my attitude towards the wrongdoer and eventually commit to change my feeling about them. If you give forgiveness, it allows the community to be free to grow and prosper. But if you withhold forgiveness, the community becomes trapped and falls behind. My community is polluted by judging people by their appearances and blaming them for things they probably didn't do. Therefore, they hold grudges against each other. Members of my community could get to know each other before they judge them. When Greg says, learn to remember our past differently, he means we must remember our past without resentment. To remember well means to remember what actually happened, not what we made up in our head. The grace of non-remembering is to not be able to remember painful events. It can be experienced if someone went through a state of shock. It is different from forgetting because you never remembered it in the first place. By reading this book, I realized how important it is to forgive and how if these people in the book can forgive all of their wrongdoers, then I can certainly forgive mine. This book has helped me learn how important forgiveness is and how I should change my perspective of others.